The NASCAR Peak Antifreeze Series powered by iRacing.com has officially begun. It's all in control of Brad Davies in that 11 machine. Green flag flies. He's damn near banged up though. Now the 93 is going to push the 4 of Brian Day all the way up the wall. 4 wide down the super stretch point to turn 2. And now the 93, 39, the 3 machine goes around. Big trouble in the back. It's the race to the win up front.
Look behind him. They're 3 and 4 wide, trying to make a push to the front as the field gains speed in turn number 1. Kenny Humphrey, if he can rip it back to the start-finish line, will win here at Daytona.
7 laps to go. As you love it,
here we go.
You love it. The 1 gets around, the 5 gets around. Big jump for first place.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are back. It is Friday Night IndyCars here on RaceSpotTV, powered by And1 Design. We're going to go right ahead and run through your starting grid for this event. And starting himself in pole position today will be Jeffrey Rickfeld. Qualifying time 1 minute 44.501. Fabio Gonzalez will line up alongside him in row number 1. Marcus Hamilton, Richard Avery in row number 2. Then you've got Christian Theo Sturck and Frederick Evers in row 3. Michael Dinkel, Marco Morgan in row 4. Then it's Carlo Labate and Luis Rodriguez rounding out your top 5 rows. Rest of qualifying times coming up on your screen. Today you see Fabio Milani in 13th position. You've got a couple of drivers here in this 17 car field, a little bit out of position as we get set to go racing in just 30 seconds time. So there, ladies and gentlemen, there you see your field line up, getting ready, set to go racing here. And here is your pole position driver, Jeffrey Rickfeld, as we are going to go racing here at Circuit of the Americas here, Friday Night IndyCars. Jeffrey Rickfeld will, in just a couple of moments' time, bring the field up to the green flag here on RaceSpotTV. Don't forget, this weekend we've got yourself an absolute ton of coverage with the Ice.com World Championship Grand Prix Series from Suzuka. And of course, Gregor Hutu can win that championship at some point this weekend if he finishes ahead of Martin Klunkey. And then, of course, we've got yourself ISOWC Indianapolis 500 coverage all weekend long as drivers try to get themselves into that 33 car field. There is the view on board with Jeffrey Rickfeld as that pace car now just going to make that turn down on towards pit road. We'll be getting set to go racing here at Circuit of the Americas. That pace car making that journey down towards pit road. There you see the cars lining up 2 by 2 by 2 all the way back. As you see now, Rickfeld is getting himself onto the gas. The green flag is out. We are racing here at Circuit of the Americas. There you see, most of your cars are through those first couple of corners okay. A little bit slow at the rear there, David Buda falling to the rear of the field as those cars now store themselves through the S's for the first time here at Circuit of the Americas. Going to be running for 25 laps here today. And there you see, out front, Jeffrey Rickfeld has got himself an early lead as they work themselves through those first couple of corners. I'll tell you who has lost out in the early going. That is Fabio Gonzalez. We're having a look. He's now running himself in the 4th position on the racetrack, but Rickfeld is charging away already, and this is the view from the rear. Just a huge gap as we ride on board with Jeffrey Rickfeld. Just having a look for our timing and scoring. Everyone is through those first couple of corners okay, so no issues there at all. Oh, we got big trouble at the rear of the field there. There we see one car at least is out. Let's get ourselves a replay of that. So this was down in the mid-pack. We are getting word that there's just 2 drivers who seem to be out of it here. We've got Dennis Garis potentially out of it. Let's turn our cameras over to Garis and see whether we can see anything, because he was right there in the mix as that incident happened. It was just coming over this crest. So we'll stick with this for just a moment's time, figure out exactly what happened. But it will be somewhere around here. It's actually just in front. You'll see these guys come out of the corner, and then you can see carnage going on just ahead of them on the racetrack. So we'll just see whether we can get a photo of that. But big trouble in the early going for some of these drivers. Let's see if we can get another look. So then, we'll have a look from our onboard. There you see 2 free cars coming together there. We've got Fabio Ortega, who is classified as out of the race. We'll go back to our live coverage. We've also got Dennis Garis and Marco Acadino all scored well down the field. There you see is Marco now just trying to bring his car onto pit road, and that is a very sorry sight for him in that number 17 car. He is going to get himself 4 fresh tyres, and he'll top up with fuel as well, but this is not going to be the way he wanted to start this event. Dennis Garis is also very slow right now. There you see him bringing his car on towards pit road, and Ortega is classified as out of the race. You've also got Martin Kolak even, and he looks as though he's having all sorts of issues trying to get that car pointing in the right direction. He is down in the 14th position. He was involved in that incident as well. But here is your race leader, and there you see Jeffrey Redfeld from our onboard overhead coverage even, as he is getting set to complete his 2nd lap of this event. And here you can see the gap is now 3 seconds already over Marcus Hamilton. So an absolutely storming start for Redfeld in this event. There you can see Redfeld, and there you can see the gap back to Marcus Hamilton. He himself has about a 1.4 second advantage over Richard Avery, who runs in the 3rd position. There is Avery, and then Fabio Gonzalez right now running himself in the 4th position. Your top 5 are spread out, but you can see Gonzalez has got about a 1 second buffer. As we're having a look from the rear, Gonzalez over Christian Theo Zulk. Zulk is only about 1 second behind right now on the racetrack. So there are your top 5, and to give you confirmation, we've got Dennis Garis and Fernando Ortega still classified on pit road. Marco, there you see him on your screen, has actually come back out onto the racetrack, but is scored down in the 15th position on the racetrack. You can see his front wing is okay, but he does look a little bit slow right now as he continues along on what is his 2nd lap of this event. And just having a look, actually, he's already at least a minute behind your race leaders. He's going past the slow car there. That, I believe, was Kolak, who we did see the incident with him earlier. He really is struggling. I do expect Kolak to potentially come onto pit road this time by. The answer to that question is yes, he will. Marin S. Kolak is struggling right now, and he is classified down in that 15th position. He's got himself a bit of a torn up front wing, and there you can see it there on our onboard screen. He is going to make himself a pit stop, and he will likely be classified now as out of the race. If you can get a new front wing, there is a chance he might just be able to get out, but he will definitely be well off pace. So let's see if there's any work that they are going to do then to Kolak's car, as he is just having a look. Yeah, he's getting himself a new front wing. Front wing has been replaced, and he is going to go back out and away onto the racetrack. That is Ortega. You see him just going past there. Confirmation of the pit stop time. Well, for him, that was an 11.6 seconds, and so he did get a new front wing out of that as well. You can see that there on your screen. Jeremy Whitfield, however, continues to have his 2 second advantage, his 3 second advantage even, over Marcus Hamilton. Now, last time by, it was a 1 minute 46.313 as Whitfield comes past the start-finish line. That last time by, he does himself a 1 minute 46.298. Gap between himself and Marcus Hamilton. Well, again, it's about 2.9 seconds on the racetrack, but Hamilton's last lap time, again, a 1 minute 46.283. So very close now between those top 2 drivers. In fact, Hamilton, that last time by, was just a little bit quicker, as we're going to ride on board now through this magnificent section with Marcus Hamilton. So you see up to 160-ish miles an hour, breaking it down to 40 miles an hour for the hairpin. Then you're on to what is an incredibly fast straightaway. There you can see your top two drivers. We'll just focus in there on Marcus Hamilton. You can see just Richard Avery just a little bit further back as well, running himself in that third position. You'll see the huge concertina effects. They come down. There you can see your race leader just at the bottom of your screen. Then Hamilton. Then you can see Richard Avery running himself in that third place on the racetrack. In fact, Avery has closed that gap now. It is just 1.2 seconds on the racetrack between Marcus Hamilton and Richard Avery. In fact, we have a look from the rear of Hamilton. You can see Avery is getting closer and closer. And that last time by, actually, Richard Avery was the fastest of your top three drivers. So this battle isn't over. We did talk to some drivers before the race, and they did say that if you push too hard, you're definitely going to have to come onto pit road a lot earlier than that lap 18 window, which is where the fuel will likely run out. We actually expect to see drivers on pit road around lap 14, lap 15. Going to bring the ticker up along the top of your screen, but there you can see your third, fourth and fifth place cars as they come down towards the turn one once again, and they can see the battle for P5, 6 and 7 going on the racetrack right now as well. As you can see, there is Frederick Evers, and it's very close right now between himself and Christian Theo Salt, as we're riding on board now with Frederick Evers in that 6th place on the racetrack, just literally about 2 tenths of a second between himself and Christian Theo Salt. We'll have a look behind. You can see there that he has got a little bit of competition behind him as well, as he's got Frederick Evers there in the mix. Sorry, I'll take that back completely. It is actually Michael Dinkel who's there running in the 7th position. Of course, Michael Dinkel is your 2014 RCWC IndyCar Series champion, as Frederick Evers trying to there make a pass over Christian Theo Salt. Not going to be quite close enough, but he will get himself now another opportunity, considering how much gradient there is on this racetrack. So we'll go back on board with Frederick Evers. Not going to be close enough on the push to pass that time by with Christian Theo Salt to try and keep ahead of Frederick Evers, and he was able to do just that. That's the closest battle we've got on our racetrack right now. There you see 3 cars. There you see Frederick Evers mighty loose through that section of the racetrack as he continues to try and hound, but your 3 cars now are separated by just 1 second on the racetrack. A little bit further back, you have got Kyle Labate. We'll ride on board with him as he is trying to close down now to that guy ahead of him on the racetrack. That is going to be Marco Morgan right now, who's running himself in the 8th position on the racetrack. Now, Morgan is catching that group of cars ahead of him, as they all do seem to be now just slowing down their pace a little bit. Of course, you do get the very early speed advantage for some of these drivers, but as we'll go back to this battle with Evers and Salt, Evers is much stronger on this section of the racetrack compared to Theo Salt. We'll have a look from the rear there of Theo, and there you can see confirmation. The gap is still just about half a second on the racetrack as we're working ourselves on lap number 6 of 25 here from Circuit of the Americas. And Salt is just for the moment keeping Evers at bay. They work themselves through the sweepers. Sector 1 here is so hard on these cars, and you will see some people making some mistakes, I think, a little bit later on in this event, especially as those tyres start to fall away. And there you can see, once again, those 3 cars are separated pretty much nose to tail. Keeping an eye on the timing and scoring. Doesn't look as though anyone's on the push to pass button that time by, but Dinkel is actually getting a little bit closer, right on board with him. And he's running in that 7th position, catching up to the rear of Frederick Evers just a little bit. And behind, Carlo Labate remains about 0.7 of a second behind Marco Morgan. Morgan is still at about 2 seconds behind Dinkel, who runs himself in that 7th place on the racetrack. There's confirmation. About 2.1 seconds now between Michael Dinkel running in that Vortex sim racing car and Marco Morgan running himself in the 8th spot on the racetrack. Evers again trying to find a way past. Still found no way, but he might get the opportunity. If he can get a good run out of this corner, he might have the chance to try and make that move down into turn number 1. We're right on board with Evers. His last lap time, well, it's a 1:47.6. We'll stay on board of him. Doesn't look as though he's going to be close enough unless he tries a big move down the inside. He's going to try that move down the inside, but he's not quite close enough. And that's actually going to upset his handling, because now you can see that Dinkel, he wasn't close enough to make a retaliatory move, but Frederick Evers is still running in P6, trying to find a way past Sultz, and this is a great camera shot there. There you see your first battle and then your second battle there on your screens. But to go back very quickly to your race leader, Jeffrey Redfield, there he is, just coming through the hairpin. There you see confirmation of that. But the gap between himself and Marcus Hamilton is now 5.2 seconds as it stands. Last lap time for Redfield was a 1 minute 46.358. Marcus Hamilton, a 1 minute 46.683. You go back to Hamilton, and Hamilton still has that company of Richard Avery, who runs himself in that third place on the racetrack. The gap between those two drivers is just about 1 second on the racetrack as it stands. Michael Dinkel is all of a sudden all over the rear. Frederick Evers. Did Evers push too hard, too quickly? There you can see, actually, Frederick Evers has gone off, and that has allowed Michael Dinkel to go past. We'll get ourselves a replay of that. So here it is, you see, Dinkel goes down to the inside. A little bit of contact, actually, between those two drivers. So that is a little bit of an understanding of exactly what was going on. We'll get ourselves another look at that if we can. We'll have a look on board. As unfortunately we have just lost our picture, but we are going to get it back for you right now. And there you see, we'll start this off and we will ride on board. Here is Michael Dinkel coming down into the corner. We will see that he makes just a little bit of, sorry, that's Evers riding on board with, making a little bit of contact there with Michael Dinkel. So that's what the issue was, and unfortunately we didn't get it from that angle, so we'll try and get ourselves one more look of that. And here we are coming down into the corner, Evers, and there's the contact. Dinkel just coming into the side of him. Dinkel ran wide, Evers ran wide, the two made contact, and there we are. That is the situation as it stands now between those two drivers on the racetrack. So now working ourselves on lap number 8 of 25 here at Circuit of the Americas. And it is still your race leader, Jeffrey Redfield, in that number 1 machine, still pulling away, as he now has himself a 5.9 second advantage over Marcus Hamilton. Hamilton has now got a lot of pressure from Richard Avery. That gap has come down by a couple of tenths of a second that previous lap. So it continues to go on here between Marcus Hamilton and Richard Avery in the battle for P2 and P3 on the racetrack. And for Hamilton, he does now just need to go into maintenance mode. He can keep Avery behind him. It is difficult to pass here at COTA, despite the fact you've got some very long straightaways. And of course, you can use push to pass if needed. Try and get yourself up a little bit of space as well. But I think as far as it goes with some of these drivers, they are just going to want to get themselves to that first pit stop, potentially get themselves some clean air and move on from there. There you see once again your top 3 drivers, as Jeremy Redfield say he continues to lead away. A little bit further back though, we've got ourselves a nice little battle on our hand, and this is Frederick Evers on the racetrack right now. And Evers looking down to the inside. Will he get that pass complete? The answer to that question is going to be, it's going to be mighty close there. Evers with a little bit of wheel spin coming out of the corner. He is now down in the 8th position. Carlo Labate has gone past him. I do love this camera angle so much, showing yourself through the sweepers. But now, Frederick Evers has lost himself 2 positions in the last 2.5 laps. Potentially has got himself a little bit of suspension damage from that contact he had with Michael Dinkel back on lap number 7. Carlo Labate, though, is looking strong, and now he's got himself past Evers. He's got 2.3 seconds to make up over Michael Dinkel, who himself now is in a little bit of dirty air. There you can see the gap. It's about 2.1 seconds on your screen. Last lap time for Dinkel, a 1 minute 48.2. Last lap time for Labate, 1 minute 48.078. And this is despite the fact that Labate had to get himself past Frederick Evers down into turn number 1. So he was stuck in that dirty air down on that last section of the racetrack. Running on board right now with Labate as he continues along on the racetrack. And he does look as though he's closing, but Michael Dinkel, actually, you can just see that there at the front of your shot. He is really putting the pressure right now on Christian Theo Sultz. There is Soot, and there is Michael Dinkel running a little bit wide there as they come through Sector 3. Just a couple of corners now left to go on this lap as we get closer and closer to halfway here at Circuit of the Americas. And there is the gap. Just 1 second. Actually, no, I see a car spinning on pit road. That was Christian Theo Soot. We'll need to get ourselves a replay of that. But Soot trying to come down onto pit road, and it looks as though he completely lost it. Let's have a look then and see exactly what happened to Theo Soot. So right along board with him. Does he just get loose and actually have to force himself onto pit road, or was this a planned stop? But Christian Theo Soot, you see coming down, trying to come onto pit road, slows that car down and touches a white line, just loops that car. He does avoid everything, then he just makes a little bit of contact at the end. But Theo Soot, look at that, and he is now down in 13th position, and he lost himself a good amount of time there as he tried to come down onto pit road. So Soot has made a pit stop. We've of course had Kolak and Akanania making a pit stop. Dennis Garis, by the way, and Ortega are both classified as out of the race. Richard Avery is still about 1.1 second behind Marcus Hamilton in this battle for the second place in this event. Avery running a little bit wide there as these tyres continue to fall away. As I said, the fuel window is about 18 laps. You'll get 18 laps for the full tank here. However, we'll more likely see drivers come onto pit road around lap 13 or lap 14 because of the incredible tyre degradation that some of these drivers are having here today. As you see, Evers again in a battle with Labassi. Potentially, Labassi just pushed his car a little bit too much. We're riding now on board with Evers once again. About 0.4 a second between himself and Evers as it stands right now. And here comes Evers onto pit road. That's how you do a pit entry. You see pit road speed here is 40 miles an hour. So Evers pits at the conclusion of lap number 10 in this event. So he's going to get himself some fresh boots. He will top up with race fuel as well. And he will be good, hopefully, to go to the end of this event. As there we see him coming down into his pit booth. And let's see what the pit time is going to be for Frederick Evers representing Club France here. Looks like a good stop so far. 9.1 seconds there is the time for Frederick Evers. Of course, they don't need to get a full tank of fuel, so most of it is done by the tyre changes. Back out onto the racetrack, he will come. Just keeping an eye out. Pit road is still a pretty empty place as it stands right now. And just keeping an eye out, of course, on a new battle we have going on. As we're right on board with Luis Rodriguez, as he is closing now up to the rear of a veteran Kralak in this battle for 8th position on the racetrack. Rodriguez last lap time 1 minute 49.5, 1 minute 49.8 for Kralak. So these guys are continuing to battle, and I think that if one of these guys comes on pit road potentially a little bit earlier, it could really make the difference. And then of course you just got to hope that you save enough fuel, so save enough of your tyres to last you towards the end of this event. The pit road is still a pretty empty place. David Buda just getting himself passed by Soot there, who of course that last time by made his journey onto pit road. As far as things go on the rest of the field, it has settled down. Avery is still 1 second behind, but Rodriguez is continuing on this battle as well, as we'll have a look from the rear of Crouch's car as Michael Dinkel actually now is onto pit road. There you see Michael Dinkel making his one and only stop of the day in that Vortex Sim Racing car. Don't forget, you can check him out in qualifications for the 2014 ISOWC Indianapolis 500, which takes place all weekend long. Pit stop for Dinkel should be a good one. 7.3 seconds. He is out and away. So back out onto the racetrack then for Dinkel. He does look as though he hasn't got any traffic around him, so he can take whatever line he wants. If it's going to be close towards the end of this race, some of these drivers will need to bear that in mind, because you'll have to take a very tight entry out of pit road. And I have to say, it is one of the tightest pit exits I have ever driven. And these guys are going to have to be mighty close to avoid making contact. Rodriguez continues on his battles there, and let's check in with him. Still running himself in 8th place on the racetrack, catching up to the rear of Carl. Like last time by, it was pretty close between those two. A 1 minute 49.0 though for Rodriguez, and 1 minute 49.5 for Kroll. But now Rodriguez is in that dirty air. He either needs to come onto pit road this time by, try and do the leapfrog, or preserve his tyres so that if Kroll comes onto pit road, he'll have enough to do one more spellbinding pit stop. As they come down, you see Kroll was able to defend Rodriguez, not quite close enough that time by, as they work themselves down in towards sector number 3 once again. So then, just a couple of more corners to go on this lap, as we have now got your race leader, Jeffrey Redfeld, is onto pit road, and we've also had Marcus Hamilton, by the looks of it, on pit road as well. There you can see Jeffrey Redfeld's pit stop. There you can see Marcus Hamilton in the background as well. Richard Avery is going to be classified as your new race leader. There you see a 9-second stop there for Redfield, and Marcus Hamilton, well, he's going to get himself an 8.5-second pit stop, and he is back out and away. There you see Marcus Hamilton coming back out onto the racetrack. As I say, what this does mean is that pit road is now becoming a very busy place. There you see Marco Morgan on pit road. He's going to be out and away. 7.9, 8.6 second stop for him. You've got Virgin Coles on pit road. We just talked about him a moment ago. And just to give you an update, it does look as though that his competitor has stayed out to do another lap. That was Rodriguez, of course. He has stayed out to do another lap. So we'll keep an eye out on that one as Crouch makes his pit stop. And we've also got ourselves Fabio Milani there coming out of pit road. 8.7 stop for him. David Buda making a pit stop now down in 13th position. There should be about an 8.5 second stop again. 8 seconds on the gun there for David Buda. So then, guys yet to make a pit stop. Just 3 of them. This guy is one of them. Richard Avery. He is classified as your race leader in that number 2 car, representing Club UK and Ireland, and he has got himself about a 1 second gap over Fabio Gonzalez, who also hasn't pitted. And then the only other driver not to pit so far is this guy, Luis Rodriguez. We talked about him earlier on, trying to leapfrog Kroll in that battle for P8, the net P8 overall. But here is Avery onto pit road. And there you can see as well, you've got Fabio Gonzalez onto pit road behind him, about 1.2 seconds back, coming onto pit road. But here is Richard Avery. This is going to be a critical time of the race for him, trying to get himself leapfrog past Marcus Hamilton. We'll zoom in, and there you see, down into his pit box. Going to be, hopefully, somewhere in that 7 to 8 second window. He might be able to save a little bit of time on the gun, but it's a long stop. 8.8 seconds there for Richard Avery. Marcus Hamilton has already gone past. There you can see Marcus Hamilton down in towards turn number 1. Hamilton has got the jump there. So Richard Avery back out onto the racetrack. Fabio Gonzalez does slot in behind him. Gonzalez confirmation of his pit stop time, while there you see an 8.7 second stop for him as they continue along on the racetrack. Jeffrey Redfield is once again classified as your race leader. Give you an update, Rodriguez, he has made a stop, we think. Actually, no, we're getting word that he hasn't yet made his stop. So he's the only driver not to have made a stop so far. But the important thing is we need to have a look at his last lap time. It was a 1 minute 49.4. That is slow by his standards. His fastest lap of the race was a 1 minute 48.0. And don't forget, when he was stuck behind Carl, his lap time was a 1 minute 49.0 as well. Carl's last lap time we haven't got yet. He's a 2 minute 16.0 out lap for him, which actually was relatively good compared to some of his competition. Carlo Labate had a very slow out lap by his standards, as we continue to ride along board there with Luis Rodriguez. In fact, no, we're not anymore. But Rodriguez, he is the only guy not to have made a pit stop in this race. The gap, by the way, between Jeffrey Redfield and Marcus Hamilton is 8.7 seconds on the racetrack. As there you see, Redfield coming up to put another lap in the books, starting lap number 15 of 25 here at Circuit of the Americas. Keeping, of course, our eye out on this guy who is Luis Rodriguez. We expect him to pit road. No, he doesn't. He stays out another lap. So what this will do is it will make his pit stop dramatically shorter, down to about 6.5 seconds. The issue is, as he comes past the start-finish line, confirmation once again, last lap for him, a 1 minute 49.138. We are going to have to wait a moment before we can get the lap time for this guy, Vedran Kaj, as he's now got a couple of corners left to go. Again, his fastest lap of the race was 1 minute 46.1. I would expect this lap time to be somewhere in the region, potentially, of a 1 minute 48.7. He'll come past the start-finish line, and a 1:47.8 there. His fastest lap of the race with Vedran Kaj. I think that this has not worked in any way, shape, or form for Luis Rodriguez. Again, the only driver not to have pitted so far in this race. Potentially not only going to lose out to Carlos, but also this guy who runs in the 11th position here as well, which is Marco Academino, whose last lap time was a 1 minute 48.1. So potentially 2, maybe even 3 positions is going to be lost here for Rodriguez, because you've got, after Academino, you've got Fabio Milani as well, who's only about 5 seconds behind. This has all gone horribly, horribly wrong for Rodriguez. Ritfield, though, does continue to lead the way. Michael Dinkel, he is now trying to close up to the rear of Rodriguez. This should actually be pretty simple for Dinkel, because he is on fresher rubber. We're right along board with him for a couple of corners. You see, just having to be a little bit cautious. And this is where, though, you'll make up an absolute ton of time, as Dinkel actually still looks him back a little bit. So we'll keep an eye on these two drivers, as Dinkel and will Rodriguez come to pit road. The answer to that question remains no in this event. Unless our timing and scoring hasn't picked this up, and it can't be, because Rodriguez was down in the net 8th position. This is a very long run to the very limit of what we talked about at the top of this broadcast, as most drivers did come in around that window that we stated. Fabio Gonzalez has closed up to the rear of Richard Avery. So there you see again that beautiful shot through the sweeping S's. We're right now on board with Fabio Gonzalez, running in that 4th position on the racetrack. And there you see the gap. It's about 1.1 second right now to Richard Avery, who runs in position as it stands. Richard Avery isn't from Club DH, by the way. We do apologise. He is from Club UK and Ireland. We have got a couple of teething issues with our graphical overlay here today. But there you can see the speed from Gonzalez up to about 170 miles an hour on this section of the racetrack. 160, 70 to 75 miles an hour there for Rodriguez. Almost hitting 180 miles an hour. Indeed, he does so as he breaks down into the corner. And Gonzalez's last lap time was a 1 minute 46.1 compared to the 1 minute 46.2 that last time by for Richard Avery. So those two continue to have their battles on the racetrack, and it is a fascinating battle between those two. But Jeffrey Ritfield, you can't say much about him at all. There is the gap. It's almost 10 seconds now between himself and Marcus Hamilton as he comes down towards the start-finish line. Less than 10 laps to go here at Circuit of the Americas. Underneath the bridge, back down and towards turn 1. We'll stay along board with Redfield for the next couple of corners. Absolutely beautiful car control there from Ritfield as he continues to eke out that gap between himself and Marcus Hamilton. Just to let you know, by the way, we now have got Rodriguez onto pit road. There you can see him getting himself 4 fresh tyres, topping up with fuel. This is actually a very long stop as well. I think that he potentially filled his tank up all the way to the brim. He is losing spots. He's lost that spot to Marco, as we talked about. We're right along board of him, because this could be close with Milani. And there you see Milani there on the right-hand side of your screen, just losing out. But will he be able to get the cut underdone? I don't think he will. Rodriguez might just be able to hold on. We said it would be close with Milani. Milani's actually going to try and sell it down the inside. Not quite close enough. But this is a very close battle now for what will be the 11th place on the racetrack. Rodriguez just able, and I mean just able, to come out there ahead of Milani in that battle for P11 and 12 on the racetrack. So things really have calmed down right now, as we've got ourselves just under 7 laps to go. Ladies and gentlemen, we will step aside for just one moment and we will return with more coverage. We will be right back.
The NASCAR Peak Antifreeze Series powered by iRacing.com has officially begun. It's all in control of Brad Davies in that 11 machine. Green flag flies. He's damn near banged up though. Now the 93 is going to push the 4 of Brian Day all the way up the wall. 4 wide down the super stretch point in the turn. And now the 93, 39, the 3 machine goes around. Big trouble in the back. It's going to be the race to the win up front.
Look behind him. They're 3 and 4 wide, trying to make a push to the front as the field gains speed in turn number 1. Kenny Humphrey, if he can flip it back to the start finish line, will win here at Daytona.
7 laps to go.
Oh,
As you love it.
here we go.
You love it. The 1 gets around. The 5 gets around. Big jump.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to continued coverage of this, the 7th round of the 2014 Season 3 IndyCar Road Course Series Championship, powered by And1 Design. Don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, for more information about both the NASCAR Peak Antifreeze Series, powered by iRacing.com, and the iRacing.com World Championship Grand Prix Series, head over to wcs.iRacing.com. The next round of the iRacing.com World Championship Grand Prix Series will take place tomorrow, and that will be from Suzuka, where Gregor Hutu could win the championship if he finishes ahead of Martin Kroenke. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, don't forget as well, you can follow me on Twitter at Will Vincent, also facebook.com/I am Will Vincent, as well as we are looking up above at beautiful Circuit of the Americas. Ladies and gentlemen, there you see your race lead, sorry, not your 10th place driver, Luis Rodriguez. We talked about him quite a bit earlier on, but here is a great battle now going on for P2 and P3 on the racetrack, and I can tell you it really has hotted up. There you can see Marcus Hamilton, and there you can see the gap. It's now just 0.6 of a second between himself and Richard Avery as they continue the battle for P2. Avery has caught up an absolute ton the last couple of laps, as there you can see once again Hamilton in that yellow, black and white car, and then you can see Richard Avery in that green and white car there as well. Avery is putting the pressure on right along board with him. So Avery not quite close enough to make that jump over Marcus Hamilton. They come down into turn number 1, but there is a little bit of traffic ahead of Hamilton. That could slow down his progress, especially for this next section of the racetrack. So Avery, this is his perfect opportunity to pounce if he's ever needed one. This could be his opportunity to try and make up that one spot that we talked about on the racetrack. And for Avery, he's just got to try and push it now for the next couple of laps, see if he can force Hamilton into a mistake. But of course, we all know it is incredibly difficult for that one to occur. There you can see Richard Avery working himself now. That lap traffic remains on the racetrack just ahead of Marcus Hamilton. There you can see him. I believe that is the number 16 car potentially. No, sorry, it's a number 15 car. There you can see him of Marin Kolak. We saw, of course, him having some issues earlier on in this event. We'll have a look from the rear of his car. You can see that traffic remains behind him, about 1 second behind on the racetrack. And it does look as though Hamilton is having trouble trying to get past him. And no blue flag rules in operation in this series. So Hamilton is going to have to get it done the hard way. And I think this is really hurting him now, because Avery is again really caught up. And there you can see Just about 2-3 tenths of a second separating those two drivers. Avery looking to the outside, trying to find any gap he can. And this is working out absolutely perfectly for this guy, Richard Avery. If he can just keep this momentum going, there is a slight chance he could potentially get himself second place in this race. So Richard Avery then going to complete his lap, and then there will be 5 more to go. There already is 5 laps to go for Jeffrey Redfell. And just to give you an indication, these guys are 13 seconds behind your overall race leader. Avery, is he going to go on the button? The answer to that is no, not this time. You can see nowhere near close enough as they come down in towards turn number 1 once again. But this is the closest battle we have on the racetrack. In fact, it's the only battle we really have going on the racetrack right now. They both finally get past that lap traffic of Colac, so they can continue their battles once again. The question has got to be, though, how much did that hurt Marcus Hamilton? How much did it hurt his tyres? As we're having a look from the rear, as they work themselves through the sweeping S's once again, this amazing first sector of the racetrack. People so often talk about Herman Tilke racetracks, but this one, I have to say, is a beauty. The natural terrain they've used and the way they've just made this track ebb and flow is amazing. But for Marcus Hamilton now, he's got to hold himself on for another 4 laps over Richard Avery as we continue along the racetrack here. The second longest straightaway on the racetrack, and Avery is again just a little bit too far back to make that gap. And there you can see it's about 6 tenths of a second on the racetrack now as Hamilton continues to try and hold on. So then to run through your overall top 10, Jeffrey Redfell still leads. That gap now is about 13 seconds on the racetrack. Then you've got yourself Marcus Hamilton running in second. You've got Richard Avery in third, Fabio Gonzalez in fourth, Michael Dinkel, Frederick Evers, Carlo Labate, Morgan, Rodriguez and Fellini. They round out your top 10 as it stands right now. Your biggest mover in the top 10 is actually Milani, up 3 places. He is still stuck behind Rodriguez. In fact, Arcanino has made a mistake on the racetrack, which is forcing him onto pit road again. So that's why he's so far down. Zork's, of course, down 10 places. He had some issues earlier on in this race. And then, of course, you've got Ortega and Garicio, other 2 retirements out of this event. So less than 4 laps to go now in this event. And I tell you what, Fabio Gonzalez, he is closing up. There you can see him. And the gap between himself and the car ahead, Richard Avery, is just 1.6 seconds on the racetrack as it stands right now. So that one is closing down. So Avery has got to start paying attention to the car behind him as well as the car in front. This could be a very interesting scrap for P2, P3, P4 on the racetrack over the next couple of laps. You see there is the number 4 car, and there is that battle with Hamilton and Avery. Just to let you know though, Avery has actually fallen back this last lap, as he's now 1 second behind Marcus Hamilton, where he was easily within a second lap so before. Just having a look actually, and that gap is about 0.7 of a second. He does gain a little bit on the button that time, but you can clearly see that gap coming down by 2 tenths of a second as he works himself down towards the hairpin. But for Richard Avery, potentially it's going to be a case of too little too late. Unless he's got more push to passes in reserve. We don't know the answer to that one, unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen. But it is going to be very close as these guys continue to circulate with less than 4 laps to go in this event. And in fact, closer to 3 laps to go. And that gap is back down as Avery getting himself very loose. That's going to cost him a couple of tenths of a second there. So what could potentially be a game-changing moment for Richard Avery. Down in 3rd place, he lost himself a total of 4 tenths of a second through one very big wiggle, and that has also allowed Fabio Gonzalez to get that gap down to now just 1 second, 1.3 seconds even on the racetrack as we continue to ride along board with Gonzalez, who's worked himself up the hill down towards turn number 1. The speed comes right down to 40 miles an hour in the apex of the corner for turn number 1. Just to let you know, Avery has got that gap back down to 0.7 of the second as he continues to use that push to pass. But for Gonzalez, he really is trying to eke in Avery now. But that gap is about 1.6 seconds. It's not what he wants it to be. And he's Michael Dinkel, though, he's 10.8 seconds back from this fight. So we didn't expect Dinkel to be so off pace here today. As we'll have a look from our aerial coverage, there you can see the guys getting a little bit spread out. They'll come down in towards the hairpin though, and we really see just how close they are. There you can see the battle between Hamilton and Avery. We'll zoom it back out, and there you can see just at the rear of the shot. We'll turn our camera over to Gonzalez there as well. But Avery, is he back on the button? We'll come and have a look on board. We'll get our speedometer out, and the answer to that question is he's not on the button, we don't think, that time by, because the gap is, well, about 1.3 behind, but it's 0.7 seconds to the car in front. Avery is starting to get a little bit of looseness right now. And of course, you have to give a lot of credit to Marcus Hamilton as well. He has done a tremendous job of defending, both in stint 1 and stint 2 of this event. So all of the credit in the world to Marcus Hamilton, as that was the corner where we saw Avery get loose that last time by. We'll have a ride on board with Marcus Hamilton, as we'll see the gap behind him still remains about 3/4 of a second, as they will come to get 2 to go in just 1 moment's time. They're working themselves out of that final corner now, down to get that 2 to go signal, as Jeffrey Redfield is already out of turn number 1. So there you see the gap remains. Hamilton and Avery at about 0.8 of a second on the racetrack. If Avery's got anything left, he's going to have to get moving on it right now, because Hamilton remains in that second position. That last time by the way, is a 1 minute 47.220 for Jeffrey Redfield, a 1 minute 47.3 for Hamilton. Avery actually did a 1:47.2. Fastest guy on the racetrack that last time by was actually Fabio Gonzalez. But Gonzalez has still actually got a little bit left in the tank, and there's confirmation. His fastest lap of the race isn't as fast as some of his competitors, but he really is good at managing his tyres for the long run. Riding on board then with Gonzalez. Let's see where Avery has actually got himself a very good run that time by. Let's see whether he can close that gap. It was 0.7 of a second on the racetrack. I don't think he's going to be close enough, however. We'll ride on board with him. That gap remains at 0.7 of a second on the racetrack. There you see, down to about 0.6, but no more there for Avery. Potentially now out of push to passes, because I would have used it if I was in his circumstance. Potentially he used it at that point. He got that big wiggle to try and get momentum, and that is what cost him potentially that chance for that overall second position. As we have got a spin, or someone on pit road. There we see the Rodriguez actually back onto pit road. I'm just having a look, see if there's any damage to that car, because he had the latest pit stop of everyone. Potentially he underfueled his car as well, but Rodriguez is now down into the 12th place on the racetrack as the last lap is starting, and there is your race leader, Jeffrey Redfield, coming down in towards turn number 1 for the final time here at Circuit of the Americas. The gap between Marcus Hamilton and Richard Avery is 1 second on the racetrack. The gap between Avery and Gonzalez, that remains to be 1 second on the racetrack as well. So these guys are continuing to pressure each other, and if they have got anything, well, that is that time to try and do it. Riding back on board of Richard Avery as they come down into the S's for one more time. There you can see P2, P3, P4 all sweeping through incredibly quickly, but no gain by anyone there, as we're now right on board with Gonzalez running himself in at that 5th place, 4th place even, on the racetrack. Now, there's really one passing opportunity left for these guys, as they have got themselves, just after they come out of this hairpin, that is going to be that final time for it to potentially happen, as we'll check in with Marcus Hamilton. Is he going to have any chance of defending this? I think he's easily going to have enough chance. We'll have a look from the rear, and you can see he's got all the time left in the world. It's about 9/10 of a second. He's got all the time he ever potentially needs, and unless he makes a mistake in this final lap, it does look as though now Marcus Hamilton is going to be guaranteed that second place in this event. There you can see Avery. He's still got a 7/10 of a second advantage over Gonzalez, but Gonzalez is closing to the rear of Richard Avery, and good. Avery actually going a little bit wide. That's put Gonzalez all over the rear, and will Gonzalez be able to make that pass on the last lap here? He's going to try everything, but Jeremy Redfield, in the meanwhile, has taken victory here. We're keeping it with Avery and Gonzalez, but I don't think anything will happen. But Jeremy Redfield will take victory here at Circuit of the Americas. There is your race winner.
I like you.
Marcus Hamilton is going to come home in the 2nd place, or will he? Marcus Hamilton's coming up on our timing screen to 2nd, Avery is 3rd, but Hamilton will come home in the 2nd position. Then it's going to be Fabio Gonzalez in 4th place, waiting now just for Michael Dinkel. He will come home in the 5th position, and then Frederick Evers will come home in 6th, Colin Labate in 7th. There you can see Labate just working himself towards the start-finish line here in that Supernova Racing Team car. There will get you a better view of that. Colin Labate will come home in the 6th position here today. And then it's Morgan, Milani, Canino, and Rodriguez. They are going to round out your top 10. Ladies and gentlemen, we will step aside and we will come back in just 1 moment's time with confirmation of final results here from Circuit of the Americas. Stick with us. Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to our post-race coverage here from this, the 7th round of the 2014 Season 3 IndyCar Road Course Championship, powered by And One Design. And to run through your final race results, it is Jeffrey Retfeld who claims victory over Marcus Hamilton by 13.7 seconds. Richard Avery, despite a last lap slip up, was able to stay ahead of Fabio Gonzalez by just 0.3 of a second on the racetrack. Michael Dinkel comes home in 5th. Frederick Evers, a good recovery by him in 6th. Colin Labate in 7th. Marco Morgan in 8th. Fabio Milani in 9th. And then Luis Rodriguez rounds out your top 10. Let's go over to page number 2. And Marco Accanuno comes home in the 11th position. David Buda in the 12th position. Marinus Kolak in 13th, Ridian Crud in 14th, Christian Theo Sut, Dennis Gariz and Fernando Guria Ortega are classified as being out of the race. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for being a part of our coverage here today on RaceSpotTV. Don't forget, we have got an incredibly big slate of action for you this weekend. We have got ourselves full coverage of qualifications for the 2014 ISOWC Indianapolis 500 of both pole day and bump day. We'll have over 5 hours of coverage here on RaceSpotTV live, as well as our live timing and scoring and text update page with you all weekend long. Also, we've got ourselves coverage of the 14th round of the 2014 iRacing.com World Championship Grand Prix Series from Suzuka International Racing Circuit. If Gregor Hutu can finish ahead of Martin Kroenke, he will become a 4-time champion, winning the championship 3 years in a row. Our coverage of that will kick off at 1:30 p.m. GMT with qualifying and, of course, the entire race itself. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been a RaceSpotTV presentation of the 2014 Season 3 IndyCar Road Course Championship powered by And One Design. For myself, Will Vincent, we will see you all next time. Bye-bye.